ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਨੀਆ ਵੈਸਟ ਵੀ ਆਰ ਹੇਅਰ ਇਨ ਸਰੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਈਬੀ ਨੇ ਰਾਉਂਡ ਟੇਬਲ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਵਾ ਸਾਊਥ ਏਸ਼ੀਅਨ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਕਨੋਮੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਹਾਊਸਿੰਗ ਬਾਰੇ ਡਰੱਗਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਐਂਟੀ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੈਂਟੀਮੈਂਟ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟਰਸ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਫਲੈਗ ਜਾਲਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਡੈਥ ਟੂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਫਲੈਗ ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ BC 'ਚ ਆ ਤਾਂ BC ਨੂੰ ਸੇਫ ਰੱਖਣ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ EB ਦੀ ਪਲਾਨ ਕੀ ਆ ਟੂ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਆਲ ਆਫ ਅਸ ਫਰਮ ਦਿਸ ਟਾਈਪ ਆਫ ਰੇਸਿਜ਼ਮ ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਰਾਉਂਡ ਟੇਬਲ ਵਿਦ ਡੇਵਿਡ EB ਐਂਡ ਹਿਸ ਟੀਮ
I don't usually need a mic, but I will use one today. I want to welcome everyone here, and I want to acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Semi-Amu, the Katesi, and the Kwantlen people. And every day I am thankful that I get to live here and that I get to raise my family here. Well, folks, it's a great pleasure for us to have David EB here and meet with our South Asian media. And before I pass the mic over to David, I want to introduce the awesome team you see sitting around the table who are running in, I think it's having an election, aren't we soon? Yeah. But so Baltej Dillon, Aman Singh, Gary Begg, Mike Starchuk, my roommate for the campaign, Haroon Gaffa, Ravi Kalon, Amna Shah, Jassi Suna, Rachana Singh, and Jagrup Ra. So you came here to listen to the Premier, so I'm going to pass the mic over to him.
Thanks, Ginny. It's so good to be here in Surrey, and thanks for introducing all our candidates. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Harry Baines, outgoing Minister of Labour, who contributed so much to our province over so many years. Great to see you, Harry. Here to support. It's great to be here to have a conversation with South Asian media. The issues in the South Asian community are the same challenges that face everybody in the province. You know, we've got big challenges around affordability. People need access to affordable housing. They want high quality health care for themselves and for their family that's there when they need it. They want safe communities where they feel confident in growth and prosperity and high quality jobs. These are the shared values and priorities of British Columbians, and this is what all these candidates around the table are focused on. We know what's at risk in this election, and it's not just immediate affordability support for you and your family, that $1,000 on average for a household in our middle class tax cut. It's also safe communities. It's whether or not the provincial government requires police to enforce federal firearms rules. Who would have thought that would be an issue? But John Rustad has committed that he will direct the police not to enforce those basic rules in our community. It's also about the values of who we are as British Columbians, that everybody feels welcome, that everybody feels safe in community, that we fight racism and hate with all that we've got to make sure that we preserve what's special about British Columbia, that everybody feels welcome and safe here in our communities. I am really excited to have this conversation with you. I look forward to the conversation we're about to have, and maybe we'll just open it up now for questions of the media and get this started. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you, David. We'll now take questions from the media. As you can see, there's great amounts of interest in this conversation, so we'll be able to take one question per media outlet. If we have more time, we'll be able to take follow-ups as well. We'll begin with Sonia West, Sanjha TV. Sonia, go ahead. My colleague Jyoti has a microphone. Please do speak into the microphone. If you have a question, please do raise your hand and she'll bring you the microphone.
Good afternoon. Sanjha Sanjha TV. So we're starting off with a very heavy question. I apologize. So Premier Eby, there have been recent anti-Israel protests in British Columbia where Canadian flags were burned and chants of death to Canada were heard. What measures is your government taking to ensure the safety of British Columbians from individuals and groups that pose such threats? I know that you and John Rustad both agree this is unacceptable, but what measures will you take for our safety?
Thanks. Yeah, deeply disturbing footage, I think, for all British Columbians to watch flags being burned, people aligning themselves with terrorist organizations, threatening the safety of Canadians and British Columbians. The Vancouver police are investigating. They have certainly my full support in doing that investigation, and we will support them with directions to Crown Council, which are very clear about our expectation as government that hate crime laws are enforced in British Columbia aggressively, and that people feel safe and welcome here regardless of their background. It is deeply disturbing that on the anniversary of October 7th, the mass slaughter of civilians, that violence would be glorified, that terrorist organizations held up as something positive. It is not. In British Columbia, we stand for and we strive for peace and for all people being welcome in this province, and that's my commitment to British Columbians. Yeah, thanks for that really important question. There are 4 former police officers running with us in this election. They include candidates like Baltej Dillon, decorated senior RCMP officer, like Terry Young, retired senior VPD officer, work hard for people every single day in the streets, delivering public safety. And that is important to me, that we have that frontline advice about ensuring safe communities. These are police officers who know what works, what doesn't work, to ensure safe communities. We're working with the municipal chiefs across the province to make sure that the Justice Institute has the funding for the recruits and the trainees that are needed to ensure safe communities from policing. Unlike John Rustad, we are committed to enforcing the federal gun rules to make sure that gangsters don't have access to handguns, to semi-automatic rifles, that people who are violent at home, to their wife or to their girlfriend or to their kids, that they don't get to have a gun. In British Columbia, we're going to enforce that rule. You don't get to print guns with your own 3D printer at home. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. And it's important to remember what happened last time John Rustad was in government, which was that criminals with bags full of money obtained dirty money, obtained through selling drugs, various crimes, were able to walk that money to a casino and to launder that money through BC casinos for years without any accountability, and nobody said no. Nobody stood in the way. And now John Rustad says, trust me, I'll do things differently this time, except this time I'm not going to enforce the gun laws either. It doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make me feel safer about our community. But the most important piece, I think, and the reason why we have these former police officers running with us is because it's not just about policing. It's also about all the things we do to support kids so they don't get involved in a criminal lifestyle. It's about sports and recreation centers. It's about training opportunities for young people so that they can get an apprenticeship and get a decent job and support a family. They can see hope for themselves. It's about making sure that there are counselors and educational assistants in early grades so we can support kids who are struggling right off the bat. And any kid who's struggling in school, that they get the support that they need so that they don't have to turn to a criminal lifestyle or to crime. It's about a breakfast program so the kids feel that love at school and that support at school as well as at home, even if their parents are struggling to pay for the groceries. This is what it's about. It's about preventing crime. And when it happens in our community, it's about responding aggressively, taking the cars and the homes of the gangsters, enforcing the gun laws, and going after criminals without giving up. Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And certainly, you know, in a fast-growing community like Surrey and south of the Fraser generally, this is an area that has been neglected for a long time by governments. Can you imagine that in the last 4 years that John Rustad was in government, there wasn't a single new school built in the city of Surrey? Not even one? Now we're building 15,000 student spaces in the city of Surrey alone. It's more than 30 new and expanded schools in the city. Surrey Langley SkyTrain. And, you know, south of Fraser generally, Highway 1, let's all acknowledge it. It should have been expanded a generation ago. People sitting in traffic, everybody knew it needed to be fixed, and John Rustad refused to do it. We're the ones who are expanding the highway. But you're right, recreational centers, sports centers, cultural centers, this is the life of a community. This is what makes life exciting. This is also gives kids opportunities to do something after school that's positive, that helps build a community. And that's why we've dedicated a fund in our platform to support this kind of infrastructure, not just south of the Fraser, but right across the province, $100 million around sports facilities, cultural facilities, making sure that the swimming pools and the arenas are there. And we also, when we were in government, put $1 billion in. That's just starting to hit the ground now. These municipal processes, they take a really long time, but it's just starting to hit the ground in new facilities that are supporting communities. We know we've got more to do. We're coming back from a huge backlog that's overdue in Surrey. Surrey was neglected for so long, but we're doing the work, and we're going to make sure that Surrey and south of the Fraser gets the recognition and respect that it deserves. Yes, I read this statement. It's obviously very concerning. You know, one of the things that makes our province special, one of the reasons why so many people want to live in British Columbia is because it's welcoming to everybody. We fight hate and racism all the time because we know that welcoming, that equality is critical to our success as a province and our success as communities. We don't want people walking down the street afraid to walk down the street because someone is going to harass them with racist slurs. And so we got to fight that stuff, and it's going to happen. That's why we have a racist incident hotline, so people can report it. We can take action to support people in communities. Now, I don't know what the specific allegations are. The statement wasn't specific about what was said and all of the various incidents. But what I can tell you is I'm profoundly concerned that we are seeing a pattern. We're seeing a consistent pattern from John Rustad's candidates. We're targeting Indigenous people with racist slurs, targeting women with misogynistic slurs, targeting people who are gay, homophobia. It used to be, and I think we can get back to this place, that there was a consensus among the political parties in the province that if you had a candidate that held these views, you kicked them out. You wouldn't stand for it. And John Rustad has been silent on these candidates. He avoids questions on it. When people ask him those questions, his press secretary cuts them off. No follow-up questions. You saw him last night in the debate. Refused to answer about his candidates' views. I think that's not right. Every one of these people sitting around the table is committed to the fight against racism and discrimination. And we've got to fight and work every day to make sure we address that issue. Yeah, we're, you know, when you're talking about the massive loss of life associated with the synthetic opioids, the fentanyl, carfentanil, these terrible drugs, some of the most addictive drugs that have ever been invented on our streets, people really struggling. It's such an awful and desperate situation that we have to try different things to keep people alive, give them a chance to get into drug treatment to rebuild their lives. It was an all-party committee, the police chiefs, our government together, hoping that decriminalization would mean that people could come forward and say, I need help, and remove that risk of being arrested or that fear of being arrested, losing jobs. Want people to come forward and say, I need help, I want to get into treatment. And it didn't work out that way. What happened instead is we saw people using drugs in totally inappropriate locations. It made people feel scared about what was happening in their communities. And that is the complete opposite of what we want. So we stopped it, and we're not going back to it. We're exploring and working on what makes a difference in people's lives. Wherever we can give a person an opportunity to get into treatment, youth treatment centers, making it as easy as possible for people to find a treatment option in their community. With a phone number across the province, you can connect with a physician and a nurse to support you in your recovery journey and connect you with treatment. If you're struggling with addiction, call the number, ask for help, and we'll connect you with help. And we've got more to do. There are a lot of people who are badly injured in our streets. They're brain injured, mentally ill, and addicted. And they're not being successful in the housing that we have. That's why we have to open involuntary care for a certain group of people in our province that are causing a lot of chaos in the streets, and they're not safe themselves. They need dignified, compassionate, and supportive care, and we're going to deliver that for them. Thanks. And thanks for the question. Yeah, I visited Surrey Memorial. I've met with and talked to Dr. Gill and with a number of physicians and health professionals from Surrey Memorial. I know they're on the front lines. I know they're feeling the pressure of the massive growth in our province. 300,000 people moved to our province in the last 2 years, and the vast majority of people moving to British Columbia are locating in Surrey and the Fraser Valley. That huge population growth is really showing up in the emergency room at Surrey Memorial Hospital, and those doctors and nurses and health professionals are working as hard as they can to deliver care, and I know they need more support. Now, we have added 170 plus doctors and nurses to Surrey Memorial, and it's not enough. We got to do more. We're in the process of adding a cardiac catheterization lab. This means that if you have a heart attack, you get the care you need right away at Surrey Memorial Hospital. I visited the site of the new hospital. It's well under construction. It's going to be delivered for the people of Surrey, and it's going to have housing right on the site to help recruit those healthcare professionals that we need. And for the long term, the new medical school will be located right here in Surrey. It's going to start taking new students in September. We can turn this around. We're finally turning the corner on family doctors. Everyone in BC is going to have a chance, if they want a family doctor, by the end of 2025. We connected 250,000 people just last year, and the pace is picking up. And we can solve this emergency room problem too. But we can't solve it by cutting healthcare. And that's what John Rustad is committed to. And he denies it up and down, but he's released 2 numbers on healthcare, both of which showed a $3 to $4 billion cut to our healthcare system. We still don't know what he wants to do on healthcare. He hasn't released any kind of healthcare plan that is understandable at all. It's completely unclear what he wants to cut. He says he wants to do a spending review and cut spending. Cut it where? And what will the impact be on people in Surrey and south of the Fraser? People deserve clarity. How are you going to solve the problem? What are you going to do? New hospital, new medical school, new patient tower, all of it being delivered for the people of Surrey. And we're going to keep going until the job is done. So there are a group of physicians who could start work right away in British Columbia. Get off the sidelines, provide care immediately in our hospitals and our communities, be family doctors. They're coming from medical systems that are very similar to ours internationally, or they're coming from somewhere else in Canada. And we've worked in a cooperative way with the College of Physicians here in British Columbia, trying to find a path to get those doctors certified faster. It's still taking too long. It's taking, in some cases, months, and in more complicated cases, sometimes more than a year still, for these physicians to get to work. There's no excuse for it. So we're going to direct the College of Physicians that they must provide provisional licenses to physicians who are licensed to practice in Canada immediately when they show up in British Columbia. And within 6 weeks for internationally trained physicians who are coming from comparable medical systems. They already have the list of comparable medical systems. They know what they are. They recognize that training. I understand the perspective of the college. They want to make sure that they're doing all they can to ensure a high level of medical care for British Columbians, and we want them to do that. But in this moment, what's needed to deliver that high quality medical care for British Columbians is to get the bureaucracy out of the way and let the physicians and the nurses get to work in our hospitals, and that's what we're going to deliver. So I was in a 90-minute debate with John Rustad yesterday. He said some pretty outrageous and totally false things. And that's consistent with John Rustad. He doesn't think that vaccines work. He thinks there's a globalist conspiracy that's trying to control the minds of British Columbians through vaccines. He doesn't think that climate change is real. He doesn't think that climate science is real. When you're having a discussion with someone that believes in these conspiracy theories, has these extreme ideas, when they say really dumb things like that, what do you say back? Obviously, these drugs are illegal in British Columbia. Obviously. But having an argument with a conspiracy theorist, it doesn't make sense. And he shouldn't be the premier, because he is guided by these conspiracy theories, not by what matters to you and your family at home. And we can't govern by meme on the internet. We have to govern by evidence and what works and what's going to support British Columbians. Like, for example, spending a little bit more time thinking about how his tax cut works would have meant maybe that he didn't side with people who already are some of the wealthiest people in our communities that he would have sided with providing support for people who need it right now. Why does his tax cut benefit someone who has a penthouse in downtown Vancouver more than it supports a young person who's living at home, trying to get ahead, saving up? Our tax cut supports that young person. Our tax cut supports multi-generational families. Our tax cut supports someone who's living in a rural community paying a lower rent but is struggling to pay the groceries. John Rustad says you have to have $3,000 a month in housing expenses before he'll provide you with full support. And he says that support doesn't start for 5 years. A little bit less time thinking about internet conspiracy theories and a little bit more time thinking about how to support British Columbians. That's what we're focused on, British Columbians, and we're going to stay focused on that. Well, I think that for British Columbians at home, what they want to know is that the person that's running the hospital, the person that's running the healthcare system, whether it's the Minister of Health or the Premier or any elected official, that they are grounded in science that will help save the lives of your kids or your parents or yourself if you show up at the hospital in emergency. Now, when you run a candidate that says that the COVID vaccine causes AIDS, which is false and absurd, this person, you're saying as the leader, John Rustad is saying as the leader, this person could potentially be the Minister of Health. This person could potentially be on a health committee deciding allocation of public dollars. Are we going to support vaccine distribution? Are we going to make sure that people get vaccines to prevent illness and save lives? These are important ballot questions for British Columbians. Nobody predicted that we would be in the middle of a global pandemic and then double-digit inflation, global inflation, supply chain problems, the fastest run-up in interest rates in a generation. These are all things that have happened. Wildfires and floods. Things happen when you're in government. And British Columbians need to know, what are the values? What's informing the decisions of the people who are going to be running the province when these unexpected things happen? And so it's important for people to know when the decisions are based on conspiracy theories and pandering to extreme views, or when it's pandering to people who already have everything that they need. Like, there's a guy in my community, he has an $80 million mansion. He loves John Rustad's housing strategy. He loves it. He's put up a big sign out front of his house how much he loves John Rustad. And consistently, John Rustad is choosing the billionaires. His multimillionaire candidate, Yuri Fulmer, he's complaining that the real issue out there isn't housing. The real issue is that people who earn more than $250,000 have a high marginal tax rate. John Rustad said on Sunday he was upset with the fact that we undid his tax cut for people who earned more than $250,000. I don't choose that side. I choose the side of the British Columbians who are trying to get ahead. They're just trying to finish the day. They're working hard, playing by the rules, and they want to finish the day a little further ahead than they started. I'm on the side of the 18-year-old who needs to insure a vehicle to get to work for that first job. And it's important to me that we have low car insurance rates in British Columbia, that person is able to build independence, that young person is able to have that car and have that independence. For John Rustad, he wants to stand with the insurance companies in Toronto and bring in the Ontario or Alberta model of car insurance. That 18-year-old would pay twice as much for car insurance, and it might mean that young man or that young woman couldn't afford to drive. These are serious decisions. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of the 18-year-old, not on the side of the corporate insurance companies in Toronto. And you don't have to believe me about it. Call a friend in Alberta, call a friend in Ontario, and say, hey, what are you paying for car insurance? We got a guy here who thinks we should be using your model of car insurance. What does that mean to you and your family? How much does that cost in your province? Because it's bad news. It's very bad news. And so I choose the side of British Columbians. I choose the side of science. I choose the side of that 18-year-old kid who wants to drive. And John Rustad chooses the billionaires and the speculators and the corporate insurance companies. And that's what this election's about. It's about, do you support the people or not? And I do. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think there are all kinds of things that we can do to speed up and streamline international physicians so that when they're arriving in Canada, they're ready to go. There are a group of physicians who are either already in Canada or they could be here right away if they were able to practice right away. And so our first step is focused on that provisional licensing to get people off the sidelines and practicing in our hospitals and our communities. But we're going to keep working because it won't be enough. We have to keep working to make sure that those doctors and nurses can get to work in British Columbia.
Everyone for coming, and I really want to especially thank to media for their continuous work in spreading the awareness and providing the information to the British Columbians, especially in the election times. Media really help voters to make their minds to whom they should vote. Thank you very much. And now I would request Premier EB to give closing remarks.
Arun, is there any particular reason you feel particularly supportive of journalists? You're a recovering journalist, aren't you?
But I believe journalists are also doing the public service. That's what I believe.
I try to remind myself of that all the time too, Haroon. That's a very good reminder. Thanks, Haroon, and it's community champions like Haroon, like Ginny, that every one of our candidates here have demonstrated the highest standards of personal conduct, of integrity, of supporting the community and advocating for the community, working every single day. I'm so proud of every one of them. And they will do an amazing job for the people of Surrey to deliver the things that we've committed to. And we know we have to do more for people south of the Fraser to make sure that the communities here are healthy and growing and the people here are supported. Everything from schools to hospitals, transit to roads, the things that you depend on, swimming pools and recreation centers. And I'm really excited to work with the people of Surrey and the folks who live south of the Fraser. We know it's the fastest growing community in the entire province. We know the future of the province, our success as a province depends on the success of Surrey and the Valley. And we're going to do all we can to make sure we're supporting families every single day. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਵਧੀਆ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਆਨਸਰ ਕੀਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਈਬੀ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਸਵਾਲ ਸਾਰੇ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਨੇ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਪਫੁਲੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡਾ ਵੀ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਅੱਛਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਨੀਆ ਵੈਸਟ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ